Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, a special crossover episode of Locked On Wolves with Mike Richman of Locked On Blazers. We'll break down the Wolves-Blazers matchup on opening night and talk about big picture. How good could the Blazers be this year? What has to go right for Chauncey Billups and Portland for them to be a play-in or playoff team? It's all upcoming next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Happy opening night eve, if you will. Timberwolves open tomorrow night in Portland, and that means that today is a very special crossover episode of Locked On Wolves with Mike Richman of Locked On Blazers. We're going to talk all things Wolves Blazers. We actually talk a little more big picture about the season, breaking down the Blazers and the Wolves. We start by talking about the Blazers side. Chauncey Billups, the job he's done. What's the expectation for guys like Shaedon Sharpe? Donovan Clingan comes up. Of course, Toumani Camara. Lots to unpack when it comes to the Blazers and the matchup specifically, how the Blazers may handle Ant. We get into a little bit later in the show. So we're going to go ahead and get into that right away here off the top. A big thank you, as a reminder, for making this show your first listen every day. Of course, you can watch on YouTube. You can listen anywhere as well. And without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Mike Richman of Locked On Blazers. All right, as promised, the Locked On Wolves, Locked On Blazers crossover as we get ready for, opening night this Wednesday night for both teams, but also really the season. I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot of, there used to be this weird, I don't know, this is really a throwback, but the David Kahn years, there was this Wolves Blazers, push and pull and the Nicholas Batum.
They were trading players.
Yeah, exactly. And that seems to have kind of gone away because the Wolves were so bad for so long. They continued to be bad. And then as the Wolves got good, Portland was bad. And now it feels like maybe there's a little less animosity here.
Yeah, they don't know each other as well. So I guess we'll just have to, how about today, Ben, you and I will help our listeners get to know the other team for opening night.
I think that's a good plan. There's a lot of guys on the Blazers roster that Wolves fans are hopefully familiar with. Of course, last year, Portland won, I think 2 out of 3 early in the season. It was a very weird, Minnesota was 6-3 or something and came in and lost consecutive games in Portland. And then, of course, the Blazers had a terrible first half of the season, were great as the year wore on. Great's maybe strong, but I think over 500 after the first of the year, right? Or at least after the All-Star break?
Yeah. The final 41 games, they were legitimately pretty good. They were 23-18. They had a top 3 defense. Obviously some of that is the silly season at the end of the year, but over the final 41 games, this was a team that was legitimately competitive.
Yeah. And there seemed to be sort of this, I want to say it was around Christmas time, plus or minus, that there was this, has Chauncey Billups lost the team? And then as the year wore on, things got actually, no, wait, he may be a great coach for this team. Obviously Chauncey Billups has a Timberwolves background. That's kind of where he revived his career. Really, his career took off was in Minnesota. What's been the overall perception of Chauncey Billups as a coach? And is he the right guy as the Blazers? We'll talk maybe a little bit later about what the best case goal is, or most realistic best case goal for the Blazers is this year. But what's the overall early returns on Chauncey Billups as a coach?
Yeah, I think if you had asked a Blazer fan up until the middle of January last year, I think they would have been yeah, he's bad. He's clearly not good at this. But the way that they played at the end of the year, he'd always talked sort of I want to have this defensive identity and I want to play this certain way. But he had never had that sort of preference for style translate on the court in any meaningful way. He had fielded some bottom 5 defenses in the league. They've been pretty bad on offense as well. It's some of the losing, the overall win-loss stuff's kind of baked into the fact that they punted on his first 2 seasons pretty aggressively. But even tanking aside, just putting an actual sort of identity on the court just hadn't existed. And then all of a sudden, the end of last year, some of it is just getting a better roster, but I also think he got guys to kind of figure out the deal. He benched Shaedon Sharpe briefly for not playing defense. He got folks to buy in and they were competitive. Some of it is maybe a little bit of the end of the year stuff, the Blazers went 8-20 against West playoff teams. Shout out to those wins against the Wolves in November. They were 13-29 against teams over 500. Like what they did, and they did really well, is they were better than the bad teams. They weren't one of the bad teams. They kind of moved out of that core of really bad teams. And I think the quest for them and Billups is to sort of take another step beyond that.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess we could cover that now. Like the next step would, I don't have the last year's standings in front of me, but I mean, they were just a handful of games out of the play-in. Portland won 36 games last year. So is a reasonable next step play in, or is it I think that seems about right. I mean, it's a young team plus whatever ends up, the Dame Lillard, whatever that ends up being. Otherwise it's a fairly young team.
Yeah. I mean, Drew Holiday is 35, which is, a real outlier, really pulls up the average age. But yeah, they're really young other than sort of the couple guys in the back half of the roster. Dame's not going to play. So you can count him, but I wouldn't, in terms of age. Like I said, third on defense, the final 41 games of regular season. Say they regress a little bit, right? Say they're only like the 8th or 9th best defense. Well, over the last 5 years, 49 of the 50 teams with a top 10 defense have made the play-in. If you think the Blazers are for real and took a real step on that, and I think a reasonable expectation would be that they are a play-in team this year. The only team that missed, the 41-41 Rockets, kind of the year before they took off, and that was kind of an ascending team, right? So being that good on defense is typically a foundation of teams that are competitive. Is finishing 10th in the West like a great reward? No, but for a team for the Blazers like trying to take a step forward, I think is a very realistic goal.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at some of the guys who should be ascending or are ascending already on that roster, and I think the swapping out Simons for Drew Holiday was kind of hey, we need an adult in the room. Yeah. We're a good defensive team. Let's lean into this identity and teach some of these younger guards and wings how to be really good defenders. And then they seem to have really found something with Deni Avdija. And, I would argue, I like Shaedon Sharpe in the draft a lot. I think there's a lot of upside there. What's kind of your, the Blazers will make the play-in if this happens? Is it development from those guys? Is it role players? Obviously, Toumani Camara is a huge piece of what they're going to do this year. But what's kind of like this needs to happen, or if they win 40 games and are in the play-in, this is what did happen?
It's probably Deni continuing his offensive sort of stabilization. Like he was so good after the All-Star break, even the final 35 games of last season, he's like a 28-4 guy on pretty good 3-point shooting. After the All-Star break, the numbers are even better. He shot like 43% from 3 and averaged over almost 23 a game. It's like, I don't think he's going to do that, right? That might be a little rich. Because that's a very weird time of the year. They did this after the All-Star break is never a good way to do math in the league. But if he's like a 27 and 20 points, 7 boards, 5 assists dude, and can stabilize them as like a not awful on offense, then they've got a chance. They just need to not be one of the 5 worst offenses in the league, and then they'll have a puncher's chance. And that's either Deni or it's Toumani or it's the sum of their parts. But it's it's either Deni or Shaedon Sharpe. Like those are the guys who are really going to lift them where they need to go on offense.
Yeah, and that I mean, you've already kind of covered it. That the thought here is they're going to be a really good defensive team, and they could really struggle offensively. I mean, you look at just the overall shooting numbers from last year. They were bottom 5 in 3-point percentage. They got up a decent number of threes, and there wasn't really a whole lot done. Or correct me if I'm missing somebody, but I don't think a whole lot was done around the edges of the roster. It's basically the same team, right?
They got worse shooting wise. They're probably better, right? Because Drew Holiday's probably just straight up better at helping you win basketball games than Anthony Simons. But Ant is just he shoots. Sorry, Ant for your listeners. Anthony Simons. I didn't mean it, y'all. I didn't mean it. But his mom calls him Ant. I'm sorry. Okay, that's what his mother calls him. But he was the only guy who could really shoot off the dribble. So he was like the volume shooter and the guy who could get shots on his own. So they lost that. I think they're probably a worse shooting team overall than they were a year ago, and they were pretty bad there. they lost DeAndre Ayton and they replaced him with, Donovan Clingan, and Ayton is not a shooter, but at least he's a better offensive player than Clingan. So like, I think like Clingan is just really, really good on defense, but they've got some real holes on offense. That's the thing that is going to hold them up. If they are merely competitive, but not a play-in team, it's because they're just not good enough on offense. That's my view.
So I think probably toward the end of the show, we'll get into more specifically the matchup a little bit, but just kind of looking at, and I probably should before Wednesday dig into what happened in those games in Portland last year. But I guess just kind of at first blush, what is your thought about like matchup to watch, or, this is what the Blazers need to do to stop Anthony Edwards? Is it just like, hey, we've got Toumani Camara, we know we're a good defensive team. And is there anything that you feel like is a key, like over anything else to this matchup?
Yeah, it starts with two, right? Because you just have to make it hard on Ant. Like he really turned into a guy who's so comfortable shooting from beyond the arc, maybe to his detriment to some extent. But like, still pretty freaking good. Even if he shot like maybe a one extra three more than he should have during any random game.
Right. He's still almost 40%, like.
Yeah, he took like 10 a game, right? Like, it's like, you don't really want to be like, hey, don't do that. But there are like, but you want him shooting jumpers, I think, like, as opposed to getting into the teeth of your defense and creating that first advantage that leads to catch and shoot threes for the other guy. So it starts with Toumani just like making it life a little bit harder. But one of the reasons they won that second matchup in Portland was because Donovan Clingan had 8 blocks and he blocked 5 shots in the fourth quarter, and he had this kind of like semi fever dream type of game, like the type of performance for at the time a 20-year-old. It's like, hey, what the heck was that? like what like, you were the best player on the court in a fourth quarter against a team that's going to make the Western Conference Finals. So their secret sauce has been that they limit threes. They're pretty good at limiting 3-point attempts, and they defend the rim really well. So it starts with Toumani and ends with Donovan Clingan. That is the recipe for them.
So you're saying that Clingan performance was not a completely nightly experience?
He is very good on defense.
Yeah.
I think he is going to be, this year, people are going to realize that he is one of the better defensive centers in the league, right? I think he's going to have that Zubac type year where people are like, oh, Zubac is really good. And it's like, he's not going to be as good on offense and he's going to have some other warts, but like, I think he's going to have that type of year where the sort of casual viewers like, oh yeah, and Clingan's a beast. But he did not block 5 shots in crunch time to seal a game against a really good team with any regularity. But he's good. Like he'll help.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about the Wolves here in a minute, but that was winning close games was definitely one of the biggest issues with the Wolves last year. All right, we're going to flip the script, talk a little bit more about the Timberwolves, and then we'll get into perhaps this matchup a little bit, maybe just some bigger picture Western Conference stuff. We'll see. We'll do all that here next.
First, though, I want to tell you about Built. Nobody likes paying rent, but if you must, you might as well get something for it, and that's where Built comes in. Built is changing the game by turning your rent payment into real rewards you can use. So when you pay rent through Built, you earn flexible points that can be redeemed toward hundreds of hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and more. But Built isn't just about rent. It's about rewarding you around your entire neighborhood. What you're going to love about Built is that, first of all, your rent's going to work for you. You're going to earn points every month for something you already have to pay. But when you're grabbing your favorite food at local restaurants around your neighborhood or heading to the gym, you can still earn rewards. Built has made everyday life more rewarding. So from your neighborhood to your travel plans, check out Built and turn your rent into rewards. Start earning points around your neighborhood by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbilt.com/LockedOnNBA to make sure that you use that link so they know we sent you.
Today's show is also brought to us by our friends at Skims. When I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I heard a ton about their quality from friends and family, so I had to give it a try. And let me tell you, it lives up to the hype. Who hasn't had issues finding the right underwear, whether it's the fit, the comfort, maybe it's just the right style? Skims changed all of that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style. Skims was kind enough to send us some product, and I chose the Stretch 5-inch boxer brief. I don't really work out a ton, but I'm active. I walk a lot. I have a family. We go places. I walk a lot for work. And it doesn't it fits comfortably when you're walking around, you're active all day. And it doesn't feel like you're wearing, like, say, workout underwear. And the Stretch boxer briefs definitely feel Like they're the perfect type of underwear for your everyday life. They move with you, they never lose their shape, and they stay in place all day. If you are working out, maybe you're just running errands, they're the most comfortable and reliable underwear you can own. Plus, the lightweight material feels amazing, almost like you're wearing nothing at all. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com and let them know that we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select this show, Locked On Wolves or Locked On Blazers, in the drop-down menu that follows.
All right, Ben, let's talk T-Wolves. Let's flip the script a little bit here. So my questions here is, let's start with the big stuff. Is Anthony Edwards an MVP candidate? Is this dude one of the 5 best players in the league, and can he be?
I think yes. I think yes, he's a top 5 player. Like, I don't know that anyone would argue he's below. Well, maybe somebody would, but outside of the top 6 on our Locked On NBA Top 100, I think I had him 5. I think he finished 6 on the list with Wemby ahead of him, if I remember right. But he's in that conversation. He's in the 4, 5, 6, 7 range, no matter how you want to rank him. And I think the answer to the MVP candidate question is it's a pretty short answer. It's hey, if the Wolves, like last year, Minnesota they won 49 games, but they had the point differential of a 54-win team. 2 years ago, they won 56 games. They made the huge trade at the end, right at the end of training camp, right before the season. Sorry, at the beginning of training camp, the eve of training camp, when they brought in Julius Randle, and that shifted everything. It kind of upset the whole season, and we'll get into some of the stuff that happened along the way. But the point is, this team is better than 49 wins. They've been to consecutive conference finals, and if they, given all of that, it's not that crazy of a leap to think they could win 60-ish games. It probably takes a stumble from OKC, but if the Wolves, I could see them being a really good 2 seed and Ant averaging 30 a game, and he's right there in the MVP conversation with SGA. We know voters get voter fatigue, and you know, Jokic has already won 3, so like, what does Jokic have to do to win MVP? What does SGA need to do to win 2 straight? Ant would be the fresh new face in that conversation. So, you know, if you look at the odds on FanDuel, I don't know what they are currently, but they're nice odds for Anthony Edwards. I'd put him right up there with those 2 guys as like, who else is in the conversation? And the Wolves should be, I would say, pretty comfortably a 50-plus win team. And we've seen Ant ascending. He took another leap last year, and all we really need is another leap, the Wolves to win 50-plus games, and I think he's right there in that conversation.
How real is his post-game? I know that that's a thing that he wants to do. How much do you think that'll be something they actually do when it matters?
That's a great question. I don't think the Wolves are going to run too many sets to get to it. I think it's something the Wolves were like, I don't know if they encouraged him or were cool with him, you know, working on it, because to your point, like close late situations, end clock situations, of course, end of game situations, that's a move that, you know, the Kobes and the MJs and the Kevin Garnetts have always been great at. And those guys are all, of course, Hall of Famers and some of the greatest of all time. But that's something that Ant didn't really have. And it's been a, you know, face up and step back 3-point jumper, or it's drive and kick, or, you know, he hasn't really had that go-to move. And so, yeah, I think it's a real thing. He certainly worked on it. We've seen him do this in the past with some things. Like a couple of years ago, he's really into shooting bank shots from the angle on the wings, and he did it a lot at the start of the season and kind of phased it out. He still does it occasionally, but it feels like one of those things he may try and force it into his game, maybe more than he should early on. And the coaches will get in his ear and be like, hey man, like you can go to this if you need to, but it's not as efficient as you getting to the rim or you shooting an open 3 or even a contested 3, because you're such a good 3-point shooter. Chris Finch does not like mid-range jumpers, but obviously it can be an effective tool to help bend the defense, give you another tool in your toolbox, you know, to keep the defense off balance. And so it's important that he has it, as long as he doesn't overuse it and go to it when he doesn't need to. But yeah, I mean, close late situations, like the ability to get your shot off, to be athletic enough and big enough and a good enough shooter to get your shot off from anywhere is super important. And last summer, the thing was the 3-point shot. And what happened? He shot 10 a game. He led the league in makes. He led the league in attempts. And he was at over 40% until like the last 2 weeks of the season. And he finished just under 40%. So turns out when he put his mind to it and really worked on that last offseason, it turned out really well. So I don't know if it's going to be that successful. Like if it's going to be all of a sudden he's like the best back to the basket wing in the league, but it's on the table. I mean, he clearly can do anything he really wants to do as far as, you know, being such an incredible athlete.
Yeah, I mean, I heard that he's like as fast a swimmer as Michael Phelps and like a sort of borderline ping pong, Olympic ping pong player. Like he's got a lot in the bag.
He does. He hit a home run at Target Field just a few weeks ago. He was taking batting practice with the Twins and hit a home run. So, like, you know, for whatever that's worth.
How much is this team going to miss Nickeil Alexander-Walker?
A lot. I mean, Nikhil's a really good player, but I think, you look at they won 49 games last year. The over-under set at 49.5, and I already mentioned the kind of roster upheaval, trading out Cap for Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo right before training camp. There were a lot of things that weren't conducive to them having their best possible season last year. So I think the idea that it's just as likely they're the same or worse as last year as better, which is what that win total of 49.5 tells me, is that it's just as likely they have the same season or a worse season. That seems crazy to me because we already talked about the Ant development. He's not going to be worse this year. Like, he's going to get better. Jaden McDaniels is 24 and by far had the best season of his career last year. This team overall is improving. The only thing that's different is I guess Mike Conley's a year older. We can maybe get into that. Nickeil Alexander-Walker being gone is the only real roster movement that there's been inside the top 8, top 9 guys. Nickeil's a really nice player. Chris Finch loved to say last year, I have 8 starters, right? Like with DiVincenzo and Naz Reid, who won 6th man of the year 2 years ago, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And he was probably the overall all around second best perimeter defender on a night to night basis behind Jaden McDaniels. When Ant locks in, he would be better than Nickeil, but on a nightly basis, Nickeil was pretty phenomenal on the perimeter. That's probably the biggest place you miss him. He was kind of a de facto backup point guard, but I mean, they think TJ Shannon's going to step into that role. So I think from what you're going to get, professionalism level, the floor of what Nickeil brought to the table every night, it's going to hurt to not have that. I do think that the upside is potentially higher with the young guys like Rob Dillingham and TJ Shannon kind of waiting in the wings to fill that role. So it hurts, yes, but I think I think it's maybe been overplayed a little bit by like everybody doing their previews and going, well, the Wolves lost Nickeil. They didn't get better, so I think they'll be worse. But it's like you have to factor in the Ant improvement, the Jaden McDaniels improvement. Naz Reid's only like 26. Like, it's not like this is outside of Mike Conley. This isn't a super old team that's going to be worse because nothing else changed.
You mentioned Conley, and I think coupled with Conley and Nas' departure, you mentioned Terrence Shannon Jr., as I call him, because I don't know him as well as you, so I don't call him TJ. We're not, of course, not as close as you are. But between him and Rob Dillingham, like, are these young guys ready to play? And not just like play in the Western Conference Finals, play in May, and like be a team that wins 58 games, because I think that's the upside with this team.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the biggest question. The Mike Conley thing is, I think he probably goes from 25 minutes a game to 20 minutes a game, and maybe even a little bit less, and maybe isn't even starting by the end of the year, but he still gives you enough offensively. The bigger issue is Conley was being hunted defensively for much of last season and in the playoffs. And that's where the guys you mentioned, and also I'd throw in Jalen Clark as guys who are going to see some of those minutes. What I've been saying on Locked On Wolves is like those 3 guys basically are going to recreate the Nickeil minutes in the aggregate. And TJ Shannon is going to get the role, like he's the 8th man, but that 9th man spot is going to be a combination of Rob Dillingham, who was the 8th overall pick last summer. So last year was his rookie year. They traded up to get him at number 8, and he very rarely played at rotation minutes last year. He's not a good defender. He's too small. He's a great shooter, but the decision-making isn't there. The shot selection isn't there. And Chris Finch did not want him playing rotation minutes last year. I think that 9th spot is going to depend on the opponent. If it's somebody that you need a point of attack defender, Jalen Clark was the best perimeter defender in college basketball 2 years ago before he tore his Achilles. He's a phenomenal defender. He shot 40%, 41% for 3 last year on limited volume. I don't think he's actually that good of a shooter. So I think your top 8 includes Shannon, who's the guy who has the best chance at being a two-way player, defending at a high level. He's got a NBA body. He's a big guy. He absolutely is terror in transition. And so Shannon, I think, is the one that's got the most upside right now. I mean, overall, probably Dillingham still does, but Shannon's the guy that they're going to trust. Like, I mean, he saw some rotation minutes when they were kind of like, we got to throw something at the wall and try and make it stick in the conference finals against OKC last year. And he played well. Shannon's the guy that they're going to lean on the most. That 9th role is going to be, do we need offense? We'll give Rob Dillingham some run. Do we need defense? It's going to be Jalen Clark. And then trying to recreate that overall kind of two-way production that Nickeil Alexander-Walker provided. But I think kind of the wild card here is, does TJ Shannon become like a 6th man of the year type guy? And obviously they've got a couple other guys like that on the team. So I don't know how much volume there is, but on any given night, TJ Shannon could have the ball in his hands a lot. And he is he's 25. He's an older second-year guy after playing 5 years in college, and he's a little bit more polished than I think maybe people realize. And there's a real chance for him to have some upside and raise kind of the Timberwolves floor, or I should say raise the floor of that role in the rotation over the course of the season.
I want to ask you a couple more questions, but let's flip it to the third segment and talk sort of expectations for both of these teams and maybe get into a little bit of what the matchup might look like when this thing opens up on Wednesday. Join us there, won't y'all?
Today's episode of Locked On Wolves and Locked On Blazers is also brought to us by our friends at Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, and no BS. I said yes to making the switch and am getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint makes it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone and keep your same number and contacts. The best thing overall is that you're going to get the same quality service that you've always had, but you're going to get it for a fraction of the price. Plus, your setup when you get going is super easy. You keep your number, and then you get to run and go and get everything going with your new setup in just minutes. Are you ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 per month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
All right. So I have a couple other questions. The league is going. Everyone's going to press, right? The league is going to press. The Wolves are more of a traditional defensive team in some ways. They're more of a traditional defensive team. Are we going to see them play Pacer ball or whatever? It seems like the whole damn league wants to play like the Pacers because it looks so good. Or is this team just so good at what they do on defense that they're just going to do it and make it happen, right?
Yeah, I would, and the OKC effect, right? Like seeing all the younger wings flying around and just, trying to ruin everybody's game and blow things up.
Right. And Chris Finch was Chris Finch can be a little tight with the rotation too. Like during the regular season, he was kind of like, I have 8 starters. I also have 8 players.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah. Will they go that way?
I don't think so. The one I mentioned, Jalen Clark earlier, he will do that by himself. And I wonder if not having to keel means you have one less body to kind of to do that, to play that way. I think overall you have Rudy Gobert. So the floor, I think I've pulled this before. I think Rudy Gobert has been on one defense ever that wasn't a top 10 defense since his rookie year when he didn't play, like ever. He's a walking top 10 defense. They're good at what they do in the half court. They don't like to play fast anyway. They'd prefer to slow the game down and set up their defense. And they don't really run. Like they were dead last in running off of defensive rebounds each of the last 2 years across the league. They run a little bit off of steals, kind of more middle of the pack, but in general, Ant likes to slow things down. And I think if you want to play that, kind of breakneck speed defensively, then that means you're also trying to create offense out of your defense, which Chris Finch, I think, would like to do. And I think they're headed that direction. And this is a down the road conversation, but they drafted Jean Beringer, the French big, in the draft this year, like at 18, I think it was. And he's more in the mold of and I'm not saying he is these guys, but he's the long, rangy Giannis, Wemby, like, I'm going to guard every position and block shots left and right. And like, I'm different than Rudy, right? He's not a big time rebounder at this stage. And he's more of the, like, I can play at this pace and be a lob big and all that stuff. He's might see minutes this year. I mean, like, back-to-backs, Rudy gets banged up, whatever. I think they're willing to play him despite the fact he's 19 and he's played basketball for like less than 5 years. But he looked really good in summer league and preseason. And I think that's kind of the next frontier. Rudy's only got 3 years left. He just re-upped, but there's like 2 years in a player option. They're looking like what's next. And I think that's where they're headed. If they speed up the pace at all this year, Jalen Clark will do the thing where he'll check in the game and then he'll kind of lay in the weeds. He'll kind of try to hide over by the bench and then try and, pick the ball from behind, as the guys bring it up the court. Like, he'll do that stuff himself, but I don't think scheme wise, they're going to change a whole lot. They've been pretty successful. 2 years ago, they were the best defense in the league by far, and they took a bit of a step back last year, but I think they've got to do what they're best at. And that's play a little bit slower. Finch wants to be more opportunistic, especially when Gobert's off the floor, and have Ant push the ball more. I think Ant's one of the primary culprits in slowing things down. So offensively, they like to play faster, but I don't think they're necessarily going to be using, traps and presses to try and accomplish that.
Yeah, I like when teams zig as the whole league says we're zagging. We're gonna be we're gonna play 11 guys and we're gonna play fast and we're gonna press. And it's like, and the Wolves are like, I don't know, we've been one of the 5 or 6 best teams in the league for 2 consecutive seasons. Like we're gonna do what we do. Like
the Gobert Towns thing was a zag too. I mean, that was when it was really right
before
after the whole
big.
everybody was going small, and the death lineup with the Warriors was a little after that. But like that was kind of the Rockets weren't playing bigs, and everybody's like, all right, just space and shoot threes, and we're not going to play bigs. And the Wolves were like, well, let's just do this and see what happens. And it took a year, and obviously they haven't been to the finals yet, but they're a lot better than they have been for the majority of the franchise's history. And now they've got, Ant plus a good defense means you're going to be in the conversation every year. I mean, for Wolves fans that haven't watched a whole lot of Portland, what would you say? Like, how would you describe the way that Portland plays defense? Obviously, with Kamara and some of the athletes that they've got on the perimeter, and you mentioned Klingon and some of the rim protection. In contrasting it to like Pacers, OKC, and then also the way Minnesota plays, very different defensive schemes. What's your kind of like high level? Like this is how Portland executes defensively.
Sure. So in 2022, they led the league in pressing. Before it became a thing that you could do and win with, the Blazers, as a particular kind of a bad defensive team, had at least developed like a style, right? They wanted to press. And then last year they dialed it back a little bit. They said like, okay, this is like, we're overextending, we're giving guys advantages, but they're bringing it back. In preseason, their pickup point was like 90 feet, just inside the foul line, like picking up really, really far. I don't know that they can do that for 82 games. That's we'll see. But I wouldn't be surprised if in game 1 they are trying to press and make him work and make it difficult for him to get up the court, or have it be Dante DiVincenzo who brings the ball across the court, or make sure it's Mike Conley every time and turn him 3 times, as he comes up the court type of thing. They want to play that way. Their style is built around that pressure and playing athletes, and playing. When they got good last year, they put Jeremy Grant to the starting lineup alongside of Deni Avdija and Toumani Camara. They play with a great deal of length and a bunch of athleticism, and that's sort of their MO. And they funnel people to big guys in the middle. And Klingon's going to play drop defense. He's like, American Gobert to some extent. He's you don't want him out there. So like they'll play that way, but they are a team that was maybe not ahead of the curve because they weren't good at it, but at least stylistically they were into this idea that I think is more common now. And now they're saying, oh, we're going to play 10 or 11 guys. So they're leaning in. They've bought the trends all the way.
Yeah.
Before we go, if you're thinking about this game, what is the number one thing you think the Wolves have to take away from the Blazers?
Number one thing they have to take away, I think, I think it's this is going to be kind of an obvious, maybe vanilla answer, but I think it's packing the paint. It's taking away second chance opportunities. I think in the game the Wolves won last year, I just pulled up that box score, and they gave up 16 offensive rebounds to Portland. The last game, the one in February when Portland was playing much better, starting to play better, they gave up 16 offensive rebounds. Minnesota's a good defensive rebounding team. But they have these games where they're just awful, and then they have games where they're dominant, and there isn't a whole lot of like, it all kind of came out to like middle of the pack defensive rebounding, maybe a little better than that. But they have these games where they're just terrible on the defensive glass, and you can't do that against a team, especially a team like Portland that's going to shoot and miss a lot of threes. I mean, that's going back to the packing the paint point, is like, you got to wall up, not let Shaedon Sharpe and these guys get into the paint. It's going to help that there's I'm assuming no Scoot Henderson still for a little while.
Yeah, he's not going to play till November at least.
Okay, so like I think it's you're trying to make these guys shoot threes. Obviously, hopefully at least lightly contested threes, and then making sure you secure the defensive rebound. You can't give, and the Wolves ran into trouble against some bad and mediocre teams, not just last year, the last 2 years, who they would let shoot these threes, but then couldn't secure the rebounds. And that comes down to having guards, crash down to rebound. It's going to be Jaden McDaniels rebounding and not leaking out. Really a commitment to the defensive glass, I think, is going to be important for the Wolves in this game. I guess I'll flip it around on you. We can end here. Like, what's your take on what needs to be seen from Portland if they're going to have a, I shouldn't say have a shot. They definitely have a shot if they're going to win this game against the Wolves.
Yeah, I think it is make Minnesota prove that they can beat you with the volume of threes that they have. Like, have it not be Ant. If Ant has 40, I worry about this team. Like, I worry. But if you say like, yeah, Anthony Edwards had 22. He had a totally normal game, but he didn't have a really excellent game by his standards. Do they still have enough shooting to make it really brutal on you? Because sometimes last year there were times when the Wolves did, and they would just be really, really tough. So for me, it's in again a relatively simple way is just like make it not be Ant. I don't think they'll send two. Like, I don't think they'll double team, but it wouldn't surprise me if, he hits 4 threes in the first quarter that they're like, yeah. No, okay, get out of his hands like anybody else, because we saw that a bunch with teams against Minnesota last year where they said, so let's send high double teams and make it and have them make plays behind them and we'll live with it. I really like your rebounding point. The Blazers are going to crash like hell. That is going to be because they're going to shoot bricks. So that's a big one for you. Ben, get us out of here so we can go home.
Yeah, absolutely. Locked On Wolves, Locked On Blazers. Check out both shows. If you're listening to this feed, check out the opposing viewpoint of the other show throughout the week. Of course, Wolves Blazers Wednesday night. And, we'll, I don't know. I mean, they probably play 4 times this year. We should maybe think about doing this again. Perhaps Portland will be, will continue their ascent from the end of last year. I think it's fun when the Blazers are good. I like watching the Blazers have a nice home court advantage. I like watching games in Portland. So, we'll see how this all shakes out. We'll talk to you again soon here, Mike.
Thanks for chatting with me.
Have it a fun conversation with Mike Richman of Locked On Blazers. Go check out Locked On Blazers for all things Portland Trail Blazers if you're interested in catching up and seeing what they're up to throughout the season. Tomorrow's show, we're going to do a preview of the season. I'll give you, a couple of keys for Wolves Blazers tomorrow night, but we'll also talk about my predictions for the season. I've already kind of tipped off on today's show and others throughout the offseason that I think 49.5 is an easy over for me if I'm picking the Wolves over under at FanDuel, and I'll talk about my exact win total prediction on tomorrow's show, as well as some other predictions, some big picture stuff. I'll predict playoff teams for both the East and the West. So we'll do all that on tomorrow's show. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. A reminder that for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Show. Our guy Josh Lloyd does a fantastic job on his show. It's the #1 fantasy basketball show that's out there, so go check that out. You can watch it on YouTube. You can listen to it wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Again, the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Wolves Blazers on Wednesday night, tomorrow night. So Thursday will be the post-game pod. Then the Wolves play again on Friday. So Friday we'll preview the Wolves-Lakers game Friday night. And that's what we have for you this week. So it's a packed week, an exciting week. And hopefully by the time we get to the end of the week, the Wolves will be 2-0 as they head home for their home opener on Sunday against the Indiana Pacers. That's all we got for you today. A reminder, Locked On Wolves is also part of that very same Locked On Podcast Network, your local experts on the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.